Okay, you understand your characters. And if you watched last month's playlist, you have built them from the inside out. Watch that playlist here. By now, you should know your characters' goals, their secrets, their lies, their wounds. They should be hopefully fully formed. Now it's time to build the world around them because no character exists in a vacuum, right? The way they see their world, the way that the world shapes them, that is what makes your story really immersive. So it's the house they live in, the town that defines them, the rules and the rhythms and the unspoken truths that make your fictional world feel really, really alive. If the character study series was about who your people are, this series on world building is about where and why they belong. So grab a notebook, grab your coffee or your tea, because this month we are diving into world building that's real, that's emotional, that's intentional, that is really deeply connected to your character's journey. And if you already know that you want to go deeper, make sure you check out my Foundations of World Building course. That link is below. It's self-paced, online, comprehensive, and yes, world building is for every genre, not just fantasy. Hi, everyone. I'm Melissa Bourbon, and this is Craft Thursday, where we explore the craft of storytelling one layer at a time, like peeling an onion. Please like this video and subscribe to the channel. It takes a village. I firmly believe that, and we are that village. Also, stick around to the end of this video. I have 3 world building exercises for you to help get you going with your world building. In my last series, we looked at characters. This month, we're expanding that foundation by shaping the world your characters live in. And here's what I feel is one of the most important things that you need to remember. The best worlds are not just backgrounds. They're not just a place where you plop your characters. They are characters in their own right. Okay, let's talk about why your story world matters. World building isn't just for fantasy or sci-fi, like I just said. It's for every writer who wants their readers to feel really immersed. Your world, whether it is small town bakery, a dressmaking shop, a sinking island off the Chesapeake Bay, a magical coastal village. These are all some of my settings. A gritty dystopian city, like the Hunger Games. All of these things, no matter what your setting is, it needs to reflect your story's heart. It needs to reflect your characters. I like to think of my fictional worlds as mirrors. If your world mirrors your characters' fears or their desires or their internal journey, it becomes a really, really powerful tool in your story. Think about Atlanta in Gone with the Wind. Regardless of how, outdated this book is, the craft lesson behind it is really, really important. Atlanta and Tara are not passive settings. They really are reflections of Scarlett's emotional arc. When she is thriving, the world feels full of possibility. When she's crushed, the world collapses with her. The setting reinforces every part of her internal landscape in every single scene. And so this is what I want you to think about. How can your world reflect what your characters are feeling? If your protagonist feels trapped, maybe their world will feel really tight, like narrow streets and closed doors and like storm clouds pressing down, and the rooms are, dark and gloomy or dimly lit. If they're on the verge of change, maybe their world is really open or it's opening up with new places, shifting lights, wider horizons, just the bigness of change. World building is like an emotional architecture for your story. It tells readers what to feel before your character even says a word. Okay, let's talk about connecting your world to your characters. Okay, we want to flip the way that you think about world building. So instead of starting with what kind of world does my character live in, start here. What kind of world would create a person like my protagonist? That changes everything. Imagine your world is like this vast wasteland, like in Mad Max. And the people who survive are inevitably shaped by, desperation and food scarcity. Food and water become the identity. Every decision is based on survival. Strength and suspicion are built into that culture. Let's say your world is hyper competitive, like a battle school, like a battle school in space, like an Ender's Game. The kids inside this world are shaped by the pressure and the intelligence and the strategy and the emotional isolation that they experience living in this confined space. The world builds their character. Now, you really want to think about these things as you're building your worlds within your fictional stories. Okay, I want to share an example that really reframed the way I think about world building. And this just happened. I just finished reading Project Hail Mary. I wanted to read this before the movie comes out next spring, and my husband read it and loved it. So it's Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. Sci-fi is not usually my comfort zone, although I did love Ender's Game. But with this movie coming out, I thought it was important to read it. I always like to read the book first, and I am so glad I did, because the world building is so brilliant, and not because it's big. It's actually because it's tiny. Most of the novel takes place inside one environment. It's a sterile, sort of functional, confined ship where the main character, Ryland Grace, wakes up completely alone. His two fellow travelers, astronauts and scientists, have died in their coma state. So he's alone and he has to save humanity. That's what his trip is about. So there are not these expansive landscapes. There is no planetary system he's functioning within. There aren't sweeping vistas. It is just him, just Ryland, and then a ship that is just a few rooms. Eventually, he does meet another character, another being, but even then, everything takes place in this small space, and yet the world feels really huge. I got to thinking about why, and it's really because Andy Weir uses the ship as like a pressure cooker. It amplifies his emotional journey. It mirrors it. It becomes a mystery that he's got to unravel. It's a mirror of, how isolated he is. It's a symbol of humanity's desperation and the whole thing that he is meant to be doing. It's a ticking clock. It's a physical manifestation of every one of his internal conflicts. So every tool, every panel, every malfunction, and there are all of these things, there's lots of twists and turns, carries a lot of story weight. So when Ryland is confused, the ship feels really like this labyrinth, like this maze, and he's got to figure things out. When he's terrified, it's too quiet and he's so isolated and he's alone. And when he figures something out, it's almost like the ship is, celebrating with him. Because the world that he lives in mirrors his emotional arc, it feels like the ship is changing, but it's actually not. It's a static entity, but it is at the heart of the world building that Andy Weir does. It's not about size. It's not about, these vast settings or multiple settings even that he creates. It's about the emotional impact that the setting has that mirrors what the character Ryland Grace is going through. Okay, if you flip that question, so if you ask yourself, what kind of world created your protagonist? Now, flip it and ask yourself, how must this world change for them to grow? Where the world expands or contracts or lightens or darkens or warms or cools, this is where your story gets deeper. That's how you write a world that evolves with your character. So let's look at a few examples across genres. These are examples from my different series. In a cozy mystery, my recent novella, Hem Fatale, Liz, Texas. It's warm, it's charming, it's full of community and traditions. It is also layered with tons and tons of secrets, as mysteries tend to have. So every storefront, every local event reinforces the internal struggle that my character Harlow is dealing with between belonging and independence and solving this mystery and, exonerating people that she cares about. The world she's living in supports her and challenges her. In magical realism, my book Magic series, Devil's Cove is a town that is kind of stitched together by this folklore and this history. And it echoes Pippin, my main character's emotional inheritance of this divination, bibliomancy, and the 2,000-year-old curse that her family is subject to. So her tug of war is between the skepticism and the belief, and the world deepens the theme of the legacy, and the isolation of being on this island really contributes to that. Another magical realism women's fiction book, but with some fantasy elements, is House of Spells and Secrets. So Swallow Hall is literally alive. It is sentient. It's tied to ancestral magic, and It has huge emotional resonance. It holds secrets and untapped magic and so much emotion itself. So it reveals itself as Rowan, my main character, and her sisters grow and learn to interpret it. The world evolves as the characters evolve, and that is true of the island as well. The setting of this book is the Chesapeake Bay in 1971, and it's based on Tangier Island, which is an island that is actually sinking in the Chesapeake. So the world evolves, and in my case, on Bird Island and Swallow Hall, the discovery of magic and the sisters as they learn who they are and what their gifts are, their powers are, it definitely impacts both the house and the island. All right, let's look at historical fiction. Let's look at Gone with the Wind, but only for the craft, not through everything's wrong with it through today's lens. Let's look at the setting and the world building because it's very powerful. Atlanta and Tara are crafted as emotional landscapes that mirror what Scarlett goes through. So they rise and fall with Scarlett's arc, emphasizing her internal journey, the turmoil, the determination, the desperation, and ultimately her reinvention. The world around her almost feels her, but it's a reflection of what she's going through. So when your world and your character evolve together, your story is that much stronger, and the way that it progresses, it just works. It jives like puzzle pieces. There are 3 layers of world building, and I teach this in my world building course. They apply to every genre. First is the physical world. This is very sensory. So what does your world look like, smell like, sound like, feel like? These details are what anchor your reader's senses. This is the showing sensory details. You are showing your world. You are tapping into those sensory details. The second part is the cultural world. This is emotional. So what are the rules of your world, the traditions, the beliefs, the habits, unspoken norms, spoken norms? This is where the emotional richness of your world comes in. So you're building in emotion through sort of that belief system, through those emotional components. Okay, and third is the internal world, and this is symbolic. How does your setting mirror your protagonist's inner life? So remember, if somebody is experiencing change, then your world might open up. So think about how your setting mirrors your protagonist's inner life. What emotional texture is there within the scenery that reflects what your character is going through? If you build in all 3 of these elements, these world building elements, which is the physical world, the cultural world, and the internal world, you're building a really complete and comprehensive setting or world that is going to enhance your entire story. You're layering in these elements, and it's going to bring your world alive. It's going to make your world, character in and of itself. Okay, I mentioned that I have a couple of exercises for you, so here they are. The first is what I like to call the mirror test. So describe your setting at the beginning of your story. Then again, at the end of your story. How has it changed? That is the emotional arc in physical form. So has your setting changed at all? And if it hasn't, should it? And can it reflect your character's emotion to mirror that emotional arc? The second exercise is 1 secret per setting. It's fun to give every setting a secret, something that is sensed maybe but not seen, a locked drawer, a forgotten room, a myth that everybody knows about but won't talk about, some sort of instant depth that exists and it's there kind of hovering in the background. This secret adds a layer into the setting and it just creates an element of mystery. So it's a fun thing to try and incorporate in. And then my third exercise for you is the sensory snapshot or a sensory exploration. List 5 sensory details for your main setting. So think about sight, sound, smell, texture, and taste. These 5 words sort of create a starter pack for you of your world's setting. And from there, you can help it grow. So again, think about 5 sensory details for the main part of your setting. And then you can do it for other settings as well if you have multiple settings. You're looking at sight, sound, smell, texture, and taste to help you bring your setting alive. What is coming next? This video is the first in the Worldbuilding series on Craft Thursday. So what is coming up is a video about emotion and atmosphere. This is about how tone shapes the reader's experience. There's a video about magic, belief, and culture. It's the hidden sort of architecture of your world. And then there's a video on integrating world building, how to make your world equal your story. By the end of the series, the goal is you'll have a world that really breathes, that's come alive, that is a character within your story, that evolves and supports your character's emotional journey as a reflection of what they go through. Now, if you want a head start, again, check out my world building course at Writer Spark Academy. That link is below. It is a great comprehensive course just on this subject. And if you haven't watched the character study playlist, start there. It is a great foundation for everything that we're about to build on. So watch that first if you haven't already, and then make sure that you tune in next Thursday for the next world building video. I'm Melissa Bourbon. I will see you next Thursday. Until then, happy writing.
Ain't never needed Poppy's blessing, no. You need keep working just to get it though. I know she carried your whole world.